Hi, Hank. Aunt Jeannie here. We're still reading James and the Giant Peach. See the helicopter and the peach up on the top of the building. All right. Outside in the garden, at that very moment, Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker had just taken their places at the front gate, each with a bunch of tickets in their hand, and the first stream of early morning sightseers was visible in the distance. "We shall make a fortune today," Aunt Spiker was saying. "Just look at all of those people." "I wonder what became of that horrid little boy of ours last night. He never did come back in, did he? He probably fell down in the dark and broke his leg. Or his neck. Just wait till I get my hands on him. He'll never want to stay out all night ever again by the time I'm finished with him." Both women, or wait, what was that awful noise? Both women swung around to look. The noise, of course, had been caused by the giant peach crashing through the fence. Oh, that's right. Remember the caterpillar had to chew through the stem and they were all on the inside holding on? So the noise had been caused by the giant peach crashing through the fence that surrounded it. And gathering speed, every second it came rolling across the garden toward the place where Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were standing. They gaped, they screamed, they started to run. They panicked. They both got in each other's way. They began pushing and jostling, and each of them was thinking only about saving herself. Aunt Sponge, the fat one, tripped over a box that she'd brought along to keep the money in and fell flat on her face. Ha, ha, ha! Aunt Spiker immediately tripped over Aunt Sponge and came down on top of her. They both lay on the ground, fighting and clawing and yelling and struggling frantically to get up again before they could do this. The mighty Peach was upon them. There was a crunch, and then there was silence. The peach rolled on, and behind it Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker lay ironed out upon the grass, as flat and thin and lifeless as a couple of paper dolls. Serves them right, they're so mean, huh? Now, the peach had broken out of the garden. I'll turn it this way. The peach had broken out of the garden and was over the edge of the hill, rolling and bouncing down the steep slope at a terrific pace. Faster and faster it went, and the crowds of people who were climbing up the hill suddenly caught the sight of this terrible monster peach plunging down upon them. They screamed, they scattered, and the peach went hurling by. At the bottom of the hill, it charged across the road, knocking over a telegraph pole and flattening two parked cars. Then it rushed madly about 20 fields, breaking down through all the fences and hedges. It went through the herd of Jersey cows, and then through a flock of sheep, and then through a paddock of horses. The peach was going at a tremendous speed, with no sign of slowing down. And about a mile further on, it came to a village. The peach was still going, down the main street of the village it rolled, the people leaping frantically out of its path right and left. At the end of the street, it went crashing right through the wall of an enormous building and out the other side, leaving two gaping holes in the brickwork. This building happened to be a famous factory where they made chocolate, and almost at once a great river of warm, melted chocolate came pouring out of the holes in the factory wall. Yum, yum, yum. A minute later, this brown, sticky mess was flowing through every street in the village, oozing under the doors of houses and into people's shops and gardens. Children were wading in it up to their knees, and some were even trying to swim in it. All of them were sucking the chocolate into their mouths with great, greedy gulps. The Peach rushed on the countryside, on and on and on, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. An old man sitting quietly beside a stream had his fishing rod whisked out of his hands as it went dashing by. And a woman called Daisy was standing so close to it as it passed that she had the skin taken off the tip of her long nose. Would it ever stop? Why should it? A round object will always keep on rolling as long as it is on a downhill slope, and in this case the land sloped downhill all the way until it reached the ocean. The same ocean that James had begged his aunts to be allowed to visit the day before. Well, perhaps he was going to visit it now. The Peach was rushing closer and closer to it every second, and closer also to the towering white cliffs that came first. These cliffs are the most famous in the whole of England, and they are hundreds of feet high. Below them, the sea is deep and cold and hungry. Many ships have been swallowed up and lost forever on this part of the coast, and all the men who were in them as well. The Peach was now only 100 yards away from the cliff. Now 50, now 20, now 10, 5, and when it reached the edge of the cliff, it seemed to leap up into the sky and hang there, suspended for a few seconds, still turning over and over until it began to fall. Down, down, down. Smack! It hit the water with a colossal splash and sank like a stone. A few seconds later, it came up again, and this time up it stayed, floating serenely upon the surface of the water. At this moment, the scene inside the Peach itself was one of indescribable chaos. James Henry Trotter was lying bruised and battered on the floor of the room amongst a tangled mass of centipede and earthworm and spider and ladybug and glowworm and old green grasshopper. In the whole history of the world, no travelers had ever had a more terrible journey than these unfortunate creatures. It had started out well, with much laughing and shouting, and for the first few seconds, as the Peach had begun to roll slowly forward, nobody had minded being tumbled about a little bit. And when it went bump, and the centipede shouted, "That was Aunt Sponge," and then bump again, and "That was Aunt Spiker," there had been a tremendous burst of cheering all around. But as soon as the Peach rolled out of the garden and began to go down a steep hill, rushing and plunging and bounding madly downward, then the whole thing became a nightmare. Probably like a very unfun roller coaster. James found himself being flung up against the ceiling, back onto the floor, sideways against the wall, then up onto the ceiling again, and up and down and back and forth and round and round. And at the same time, all the other creatures were flying through the air in every direction. And so were the chairs and the sofa, and not to mention the 42 boots belonging to Centipede. Everything and all of them were being rattled around like peas inside an enormous rattle that was being rattled by a mad giant who refused to stop. To make it worse, something went wrong with the glowworm's lighting system, and the room was in pitch darkness. There were screams and yells and cries of pain, and everything kept going round and round and round. Once James made a frantic grab at some thick bars sticking out from the wall, only to find that they were a couple of Centipede's legs. "Let go, you idiot!" shouted Centipede, kicking himself free, and James was promptly flung across the room into the old green grasshopper's lap. Twice he got tangled up in Miss Spider's legs, and toward the end the poor earthworm, who was cracking himself like a whip every time he flew through the air from one side of the room to the other, coiled himself around James's body in a panic and refused to unwind. Oh, it was a frantic and terrible trip, but it was all over now, and the room was suddenly very still and quiet. Everyone was beginning slowly and painfully to disentangle himself from everyone else. "Let's have some light," shouted Centipede. "Yes, light! Give us some light!" they cried. "I'm trying," answered the poor glowworm. "I'm doing my best. Please be patient." They all waited in silence. Then a faint greenish glow began to glimmer out of the glowworm's tail, and this gradually became stronger and stronger until it was enough to see by. What a mess, huh? "Some great journey," the Centipede said, limping across the room. "I shall never be the same again," murmured the earthworm. "Nor I," the ladybug said. "It's taken years off my life." "But my dear friends," cried the old green grasshopper, "we were there." "Where? Where is there?" "I don't know," the grasshopper said, "but I'll bet it's somewhere good." "We are probably at the bottom of a coal mine. We certainly went down and down and down very suddenly in the last moment. I felt it in my stomach. Perhaps we are in the middle of a beautiful country full of song and music. Or near the seashore," James said. "Pardon me," murmured the ladybug, "but am I wrong in thinking that we seem to be bobbing up and down?" "Bobbing up and down? What on earth do you mean?" "I think you're still giddy from the journey. You'll get over it in a minute. Is everybody ready to go upstairs now and take a look around?" "Yes, yes," they chorused. "Come on, let's go." "I refuse to show myself out of doors in my bare feet," said the Centipede. "I think I need to get my boots on first." "Oh, for goodness sake," Earthworm said, "let's not go through all that nonsense again." "Let's all lend Centipede a hand and get it over with," said the ladybug. So they did, all except Miss Spider, who set about weaving a long rope ladder that would reach from the floor up to a hole in the ceiling. The old green grasshopper had wisely said that they must not risk going out of the side entrance when they didn't know where they were, but first must go up on top of the peach and have a look around. So half an hour later, when the rope ladder had been finished and hung, and the 42nd boot had been laced neatly onto the Centipede's 42nd foot, they were all ready to go out. Amidst mounting excitement and shouts of "Here we go, boys! The promised land! I can't wait to see it," the whole company climbed up the ladder one by one and disappeared into a dark, soggy tunnel in the ceiling that went steeply, almost vertically, upward. Okay, good night. We'll read more next time. Love you.